Hey everybody, yep, this is recording. Today I want to, in this first lecture, I want to talk about what happened at Shiloh, uh, which is a battle that was fought on the border between, let's see, Tennessee and Mississippi. It happened in southern Tennessee, in the middle part of Tennessee, um, in April of 1862, and U.S. Grant was very much involved with this. Let me just remind you of the overall military situation. Now, we're in April 1862, right? And as you know, McClellan is just, I guess he's just sending down his 100,000, 120,000 men to begin the Peninsular Campaign, which of course is going to end up in complete chaos with his defeat, Lee gaining command or being appointed commander of the Confederate Army, Lee pushing McClellan back from the gates of Richmond, and then Lee going nuts through central Virginia that summer of 1862, and ending up in Maryland, where he fights to a tactical draw against George McClellan, although it's a strategic victory for the Union because Confederate forces do retreat from Maryland in September of 62. So that's what's going on in the East, okay? It's a very, very different story in the West. In what I want to get across to you is that for the first 3 years of the Civil War, there is almost no coordination between the Union Army in what we call the West and the Union Army in the East. Pretty much these commanders did their own thing. And there's not one single brain, so to speak, that is coordinating activities for the entire Union Army in the entire United States. That doesn't happen until the spring of 1864 when U.S. Grant is taken from the West. Lincoln brings him up to Washington, D.C., and Grant gains command of the entire Union Army, and he begins a coordinated campaign against all Confederate forces, both East and West. But we're in 1862, and that has not happened yet. And I can't really overemphasize the significance of this. And I talk a lot about how I want the students in this class to come out of it with a sophisticated understanding of the Civil War. And I've talked a lot about the politics of it, the politics of emancipation. Now I'm more focused on the military aspects of it, the strategic aspects. And the point that I want to make is that it's not until 1864 that the Union armies, East and West, are fighting in a coordinated fashion. So what's going on in the East doesn't really affect what's going on in the West, and what's going on in the West doesn't really affect what's going on in the East. Okay? So today, or in this podcast anyway, I'm going to talk about the Shiloh campaign. And the Shiloh campaign culminates in April 1862. Like I say, just a little bit before McClellan lands his men on the tip of the peninsula to begin that ill-fated campaign. Okay, so that's kind of the bigger strategic picture that I'm painting here. It's one civil war, but Union arms East and West are doing their own thing. Okay, now let's focus on the West. As you know, and as I talked about last week, in February of 1862, Grant won these major victories at Fort Henry and Fort Donelson. By capturing Fort Henry, Grant gains control over the Tennessee River. And as I talked about last week, and as I talked about on Monday, what you had by gaining control of the Tennessee River, it's really a dagger into Tennessee. The Union military controls the Tennessee River because, again, think of it as a transportation artery, not a natural barrier. And again, remember that the Union Navy is very, very active on these rivers. the Union Navy, somewhat surprisingly, if you're new to the Civil War, is very much a part of campaigns in the interior of North America, because the rivers, the Tennessee River, the Cumberland River, the Mississippi River, are so enormous. And what you need the Navy for transportation, for gunships, for artillery. They had steamships at this point. So anyway, by capturing Henry, Grant and Admiral Foote gained control over the Tennessee River, and by capturing Donelson, the Union gains control over the Cumberland River, and very, very quickly Nashville falls into the hands of the Union Army. By the way, Memphis is going to fall very quickly as well. So Grant wins these major victories in February of 1862. But then Grant, being Grant, he's got to decide what he's going to do next. Grant's not the kind of guy that just sat on his laurels. So as he looked at the map and he is in communication with Washington, D.C., with his superiors there. And as they look at the map, they see the city of Corinth. And I don't know, I'll send this map on the announcement that I give when the podcaster posted. But Corinth, Mississippi was a very important center, or it was a very important objective for the Union troops, because of the railroads that went through Corinth. Corinth, the Memphis and Charleston Railroad goes through Corinth, and railroads were hugely important in terms of being able to move troops and goods throughout the South. So Grant, when he looks at the map, he decides that the best objective for the Union Army, now that he's captured Henry and Donelson, and by extension the Tennessee River and the Cumberland River, is to go down the Tennessee River and to capture Corinth, which is this major railroad center in the South. And then by capturing Corinth, Grant can really cut the communications in this part of the Western Theater, which would have been a major blow to the Confederacy. So this is where Grant's thinking. This is where this is why he decides to go towards Corinth in the months after his great victories at Fort Henry and Fort Donelson.